is anomalous on its own. And is it deploying probes? We can have a look at something in this presentation. If you want to look at 3i Atlas, we can start with it. There's some
we should do
really
that.
intriguing evidence that it may have dropped off probes as it was passing Mars on the 3rd and 4th of October of this year.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you know about 3i Atlas? Where is it come from, and what is it actually doing? And what are the anomalies?
Well, the anomalies are its odd color. It looks like it's burning some type of nickel compound, which gives it this bluish color. And there's a very low iron content, as far as I understand, which is not like a normal comet. Then it's got an anti-tail pointing towards the sun at all times. It's like a shield, you could say, that's protecting this object from the solar wind and the radiation of the sun. And Avi Loeb speculates those might be little nanoparticles that are also absorbing interstellar or intersolar particles and possibly replicating or converting that material into something that the larger object can use. Look, it's very speculative, of course. And then it's also got these strange smaller objects that shoot off. When it was passing Mars, it looks like it shot off a couple. And when it went around the sun and it was approaching Venus, it looks like it shot off a couple of these very fast-moving objects. That could be probes. He speculates this thing could be probing us. And then it's got some other weird anomalies like that long exhaust plume. It doesn't look like a conventional comet's tail. It looks more like gas that's venting off quite a high speed. And it's got 3 or 4 of those longer tails, not just the one that you'd expect from a comet. And then that came in at a very low trajectory into our solar system at about 5 degrees on the ecliptic plane, I think they call it, which is very unusual as well. And it originates in the same direction as that wow signal that they detected in the 70s. These are just a couple of the strange anomalies. And the ones that really intrigue me are those that show these funny little probes, possibly, that were deployed. And I've got photographs of those that we'll go through.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to look at some of those photographs as well. For a comet to have so much activity, it's quite rare. It can't be a comet if there's a lot going on. If it's just a comet, it's either the aliens taking the piss,
Yes.
or they're really serious about coming into Earth and they're studying the solar system. And one of the fascinating things about Avi Loeb and everybody else that's studying this, it's, I always question, we're studying these alien-type objects that are not from our solar system with the limits of physics and science that we understand of the universe.
Correct.
Right? So we are making those comparisons based on the knowledge that we have, but we also are aware that there is so much limited knowledge we have about how the universe works, how there might be civilizations that are millions of years ahead of us. If you look at the timeline of the origination of the universe and how long we've been around. So these alien civilizations may be operating at a level in terms of how they, move around solar systems and the sun and the energy and what they're doing. And it's maybe like millions of years beyond what we understand.
They could be using a technology totally foreign to what we're familiar with. That's what makes it so intriguing as well, because if it is deploying thrusters or jets to keep it on a certain trajectory or angle going out of the solar system. It should
Yeah.
run out of gas at some point in time, but it's not. So these things might be consuming particles and generating energy for this thing to continue venting these jets. We don't
Yeah.
know. It's fascinating, actually.
Yeah.
So I don't know. When would you like to start the presentation, Adnan?
Yeah. Yeah. Go for it. Go for it.
Okay, let's start up the share. Right. So let's get going. I created a nice animation for us. Right, there's a photograph taken of 3i Atlas recently showing 3 jets towards the right-hand side, the longer one and then the 2 smaller ones. And on the opposite side of it, pointing towards the sun, we've got an anti-tail or 2. And that thing's about 1 million kilometers long. So you can
Wow.
imagine how long those exhaust plumes are. Those are millions of kilometers long. And they look
Wow.
like gas. They don't look like a conventional tail that you'd see on a comet that's sort of consistent. It's got these
Yeah.
puffs of like
Yeah.
smoky material. And this thing rotates. So I'd expect this to be more spread out. But these 3 or more tails persist, indicating that this thing might be pulsing. Every time it gets to a certain orientation, it will fire thrusters. That's why these things remain so well defined. That's just a hypothesis that Avi Loeb has. And then, if you look at a photograph released by NASA in a press conference on the 19th of November, they give us this huge nothing burger, if we can call it that, a very blurry image where you can see hardly any detail. It's very fuzzy and blurry. And this is from their high-resolution, high-rise camera. You can't see any stars or galaxies in the background like you would from a conventional camera. They claim this is a crop from a larger photograph. And if you go to the HiRise website and you look at the source that they claim they cropped this image from, those photographs are absolutely useless. They are full of random noise and you can't make out any detail. So that's very strange. They claim it's due to jitter. The craft jittered at the time it took this photograph. So because it's so far out and this thing zooming in so close, it blurred the image with a couple of pixels, and that's why you get this very blurry, fuzzy image. So it was a real nothing burger, actually, if you look at it. Then on the 3rd and 4th of October, not just the HiRise on board the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter photographed 3i Atlas, but also the Mars Perseverance rover. It took a sequence of about 20 to 24 photographs in about a half an hour span of the Martian sky where 3i Atlas was located. And it shows, if you look at these photographs, thin little lines. There's about 9 of them. If you go through the sequence of these 20 or 24 photographs. So yeah, I'm just showing you 21, 24. I started taking photographs on the 4th of October. And then the last photograph was taken 21:33. So it's actually less. It's about 8 minutes. Eh? But anyway, I created an animation of those slides. And I would have liked to show that to you, but to conserve time, I'm going to show you one of those photographs out of the sequence that I downloaded to show you those objects. Yeah, I've converted it to grayscale. And
Yeah.
you'll make out these long, thin lines. They're all about the same length and about the same thickness. And there's 9 of them that I saw in the 20 photographs. And if you take a close-up zoom, you can see these things are traveling at one heck of a speed. They're not cylindrical in shape. This is caused by a blur on the CCD, these long, thin lines. And they're all traveling at about the same speed. So these are small little objects, because Avi Loeb also suggested we've got to look at what happens when it passes Mars. Is it going to deploy probes? And this is what I speculate these photographs show. There you can see another one. And then in that same photograph towards the right, there's 2 more. And you can see same length, same width, same brightness. So that was very intriguing. So it was disappointing to see the high-rise photograph, because I was going to see, are there smaller objects around this thing? Are there smaller objects that are accompanying this larger one as it's passing all these planets? And unfortunately, it has no detail, so you can't make those out. But there's another very nice photograph that was taken by Michael Jaeger, Riemann, and Prosperi, which from Earth, which shows the 3i Atlas with its distinct exhaust plumes, the anti-tail. But what's interesting is it also shows 4 or 5 of those similar thin lines that the Perseverance photographed on the 3rd and 4th of October. And these things are shooting away from 3i Atlas towards, I speculate, Venus. If you take a close-up look at that photograph and at those lines, there's about 5 of them.
Wow.
But we can't say if this was possibly a satellite that passed between the telescope and the object, and it left these blurry lines. But then you'd expect to see one line. But yeah, you can see there's about 5 distinct objects. And then also towards the right, it seemed to have shot something off towards the right. And if you take a closer look, you can also see that same characteristic thin white line. So was it deploying probes as it passed Mars, and then as it got close to Venus, you know? So that's why we must check now when it gets closer to Earth, if we see these long, thin lines indicating smaller objects being shot off away from 3i Atlas at a heck of a rate of knots, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the evidence that I have that 3i Atlas might be deploying something. But further study obviously will be required to make a conclusion, for sure.
Do you think from all of this images that we're seeing and the study that's been done so far that there are actually human-like aliens in this probe, which is 3i Atlas, or do you think it's completely run remotely, or it's autonomous with AI in it? What are your early thoughts? Because it looks like it's generating a lot of energy, and speed, and I wonder whether a human-like alien can survive in such a alien ship.
Also, the extended journey that it took from its original point to where it is now, if it was traveling at its current speed, it would have taken light years to get here. So I speculate that it is some type of artificial intelligence, perhaps. And it's been
Yeah.
programmed to do a mission, just like we would do with our probes that orbit Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, deploying probes
Yeah.
like landers and rovers. I think, and many of us think, that this thing is actually powered by some type of artificial intelligence, perhaps. Because humans, I don't know if they'd be able to survive such a long journey.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah.
we don't know. It's
Yeah, and
possible.
that's why I think, the robots that we are building now, Optimus, by Tesla, and many others, I think are going to
Yes.
be very vital in missions we do on Mars and other planets, because
Yes.
they can travel for a long time. They have human-like intelligence. They'll communicate back with humans. They'll collect data. They have hands. They can dig stuff on Mars. They can, if there are anomalies, they can actually really go on site and do that and not worry about oxygen and all the other challenges humans experience, like food, for example, right?
Yes.
They're on a 6-month journey to Mars, there's not a lot of food that you can eat that's, that we enjoy on Earth. You
Yes.
can't carry a lot of milk with you, for example. Milk expires.
Mm.
You can't have pizza, that's for sure.
Yes.
But yeah, it looks very fascinating, and it's the question is, what is it? What data is it collecting, and
Mm.
how is it returning that data to its source location, and what are they wanting to do with that data? Are they looking for Earth-like planets? Is that what they're looking? Are they wanting to study the star and the sun and do their calculations based on, whatever is of value to them based on the measurement of the sun and the energy that the sun is producing? Maybe it's about energy. They're looking to harness the energy in the universe. Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, there were huge coronal mass ejections as 3R Atlas was passing closest to the sun, towards 3R Atlas. Huge, 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 like CMEs. And those were very unusual as well. So it's almost as if it attracted that energy out of the sun. It's the strangest thing. Look, we don't know. It might even be seeding life forms, for all that we know, as it's going past these planets. That's another theory, that it could be seeding the planets as it's passing us in the solar system. Who knows
Yeah.
what it's doing? And that gas, at some point, Earth is going to go through that gas cloud that it's emitting as well. And what's in that gas? We can
Yeah.
only imagine, right?
How are we gonna experience that gas on Earth, and what is it gonna look like, and do we have plans to study that gas?
Well, Avi suggested that we deploy Juno. I think it's the Juno probe that they want to crash into Jupiter. He said, give it a last breath of life and get it to chase this thing down and see if we can't get some measurements. Or is it
Yeah,
Juice? I think it's Juno.
it's a bit crazy and disappointing that we don't have probes on demand to shoot off in space and study things that come into our solar system, We're just sitting here and looking at images, whereas we have all these resources in the world, and everyone wants to find out if the aliens exist. And here is a thing that is in our solar system, and we're not shooting stuff in space, and we're trying to rebuild an old satellite and trying to shoot it off in space. We should be having these things. And I wouldn't be surprised that all these governments that are already operating in space are already having private and secret drones that are being shot to go and study this and gather information and use that information for their own commercial gain and return, or military gain or return. I wouldn't be surprised if everyone's doing that already.
Yes.
And they're
Look,
using NASA to push out images to distract us in talking about these things, and while they're busy doing something else with us.
correct. That's the secret space program. And Dr. Joseph Farrell talks about that quite extensively.
And
And
Avi Loeb as well is an interesting character. He used to be a Mossad agent in the Israeli spy agency, and so it's like, why is this guy pushing this thing so hard?
yes,
What has the Israel has to do with this? It's always interesting to ask, explore.
yeah, if you're familiar with Werner von Braun, who came over to America in Operation Paperclip after the Second World War, he ran NASA for a while, and on his deathbed, he told his personal assistant, I think her name was Rosenberg, that there's going to be 5 or 6 things that are going to happen. And one of them is going to be a threat from space, asteroids, comets, etc. And the other one will be a fake alien invasion.
Yeah.
So could they be prepping us for a red flag, a false flag, a black swan event? Because remember in the States during November of last year, there were all these drones over New Jersey, and no one knew what was going on. And Trump came out and said, well, he knows what's happening, it's nothing to worry about. But nothing more was said. So are they testing us to see if we're ready for an announcement of an alien invasion? That's the other hypothesis. There was also Lou Elizondo with the To the Stars Academy in 2018-19 that was also pushing this alien threat narrative. And I think they're still pushing it in Congress that UAPs are a threat.
Yeah.
Because they observe military exercises with impunity. That's all about money, I suppose, as well. And then there's whistleblowers that have testified about Solar Warden, which is a secret space program with massive craft out in space patrolling our solar system. These are all things that are being said, but until we see it, we can't know for sure. So maybe, yes, they've studied this thing already, and they're just feeding us little drips and drips and not disclosing anything.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's very fascinating and interesting with UAP activity is they always like to fly around nuclear facilities. They seem to have some sort of obsession about nuclear, whether they're interested in, unlocking the nuclear codes and blowing up the world. That's probably, if you think about how we may have burned the Mars atmosphere, it may have been a huge nuclear activity that went on. And that's, there's also this idea that UAPs are just a different type of species that live on Earth, and they exist in a different dimension, and we get to see them while they're traveling, and through these, objects that nobody seemed to understand what it is. And it's very funny and satire and laughable when the Pentagon comes out and says, oh, we just don't know what these objects are. It's like, what do you mean by you don't know? You have the most resources in the world to know exactly every single thing that moves, on Earth and on space. And how can you have these objects in New Jersey in the sky for 30 days and no one's getting close to it to understand what it is? Oh, I'm sure, you either know or you are dumb as, as a monkey.
Jungle, and if they were a threat, why weren't they shot down?
Exactly.
It's like that huge balloon from China that
Yeah,
crossed
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
United States with these huge cameras and equipment on board, and then eventually they shot it down after it traversed the whole United States from west to east, and then they shot it down eventually.
Mm.
No, a lot of things are happening that we won't understand. I guess knowledge is power, especially ancient knowledge. They see it as a very powerful commodity, and they hold on to it. And I don't think they'll easily disclose all this information that they have at their disposal.
Mm.
So yeah, what can we do? We can check, we can see what's going on, we can get familiar with what's happening. So when it does, it doesn't shock us.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
Definitely something going on that they're not telling us for sure. Because, you know, we have a lot of technology that we've used with the dishes to study the closest black hole. There's a really cool documentary about it on Netflix, how they use all this technology to create this image of what a black hole looks like. If you remember that sort of announcement to the world, you know, there is a black hole and it's this big, and this is how we've come up to, you know, create that image. So, you know, we can very clearly use that kind of technology to study 3I Atlas and get very close to it and really create a real-time image of what it looks like, and, you know, its shape, its size, the material that's being used, and what is it emitting, and what is it consuming, and
mm,
what sort of unusual activity that it's doing and what it's shooting. And I feel like we have that technology, um, but there's definitely, you know, selective information that's being put out there.
yeah, that's so typical of what NASA does too. And I mean the other space agencies too, to be fair. They release all these photographs to us, the public, with a little title, nondescript title for the photograph, when it was taken, how it was taken, blah, 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 with no analysis. And then when you download this photograph, you go through it and you see all these anomalies that they can clearly see for themselves too, but they won't divulge any information. They won't even speculate as to what those things might be. And then, they leave it up to us, I guess, to talk about these things and to do the disclosure, if you could call it that, to the public. It's a plausible deniability sort of methodology that I think they're following.
Mm. Yeah.
Because remember, they've dug themselves into a very deep hole by always denying everything. So for them to come out and say something now would be like very difficult for them. How are they
Yeah.
going to defend all those potential lies that have been telling us over the decades
Yeah.
if they come forward and admit something now?
Yeah, I think there is a very smart system in place in media to counter any good argument with another argument that they always have. Danny Jones just did a podcast um, with a 90-year-old retired astronaut that landed on the moon, and a I guess a researcher who has been debunking the moon landing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You listen to that argument, it's like, you know, the closer we get into an argument where we have enough evidence to conclude that the moon landing was fake, you know, NASA has this kind of like well established way of responding to that and shutting down anything that might pop up. Um, but they are losing that argument, and people are getting much more closer to, you know, understanding. Our understanding of these things is seems to be much more believable than how NASA would look at it. Um, Hopefully, with their new administrator, Jared Isaacman, we can take NASA into a new era of how we study these things, how we prioritize what we need to be doing, and how the public has access to information. But again, NASA is also, a government-funded agency, and so they have to play the politics of, keeping America as a superior nation, the leader of the free world. So there's a lot of information that they have to decide what's secret, what's for military, what's for public interest, what's for commercial interest, and they have to kind of work through that. And I think he will prioritize a lot of partnerships and alliances with private companies to accelerate NASA's mission on in space, but it will still, still publicly funded agency, and they have to feed the machine that the American machine is, from a military perspective, government perspective, geopolitics perspective, public interest, science, commercial interest, all of that stuff, right?
And intelligence.
Intelligence as
They're
well.
a major intelligence agency too, if you ask me. But they are
Yeah.
military for sure. That they had their roots in military. After Paperclip, with those rockets and things that Werner von Braun and his team were building when they got going with the space program in the States. So obviously it's a military organization and an intelligence organization, and then you have the Space Force that was recently established as well. So these are all sort of distractions, I think. There's a lot more going on, in my opinion, if you're familiar with the secret space program and what people like Dr. Joseph Farrell and them have testified about. Yeah, dude, there's so much going on. Do you want to get into our Mars anomalies?
Yeah, let's do that. Well, thank you for
Okay.
the Atlas presentation.